Welcome to the Real Edge podcast. We're excited to have a conversation today with Chad Ryland. Chad's a professional athlete, the kicker for the Arizona Cardinals. Chad, we're going to dive into leadership, preparation, culture, a lot of different things. And I want to start, Marc, with you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you guys met, how you bonded, and how you and Chad work on your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it started back at the Boston Celtics run, in my suite at the Celtics, and I had was friends with Devin McCourty and Dietrich Wise, and they had invited Chad into the suite at one of the games, and you know, Chad was a little bit different than a lot of the athletes. He was more intuitive of who actually was in the suite and whose suite it was, and really looked at how to form a relationship. And I think, from that moment, him and I kind of hit it off and really kind of conversed almost every other week or every few weeks after that. And then, I got really interested in, the journey, right? I saw somebody who started out as a first year player, and I saw what the Pats were going through. And I knew it was not a really good situation in New England at the time. And they had brought in Joey Sly to compete with Chad at that time. And, he was going through training camp, and I had an opportunity to go to training camp one day and see what I saw, and, all the rumblings of what was going on with New England. And, I believe it was almost August 27th or 28th when the final cuts were being made. And unfortunately, Chad got waived. And there was a lot of unknown. And I think a lot of what happened was him and I stayed in contact. I leveraged a lot of what my business experiences were and the failures I had through things, and really just tried to be more of a sounding board and mentor to somebody who was going through a really unknown time, right? And I was there throughout the course of my career, understanding, there was times you needed some support and some people around you that could really lift you up and give you guidance through things. And I knew nothing about kicking, right? I knew a lot about sports, but I didn't know anything about being a kicker and what it really meant. I knew I could be an asset and an ally to the nuances of what he was going through. And I think that kind of created a really good bond through things. And I think Chad really also understood that football would end at some point in time, and building relationships now where it was just as important, of what the aftermath of what once professional sports ended, what was that and what could that mean? So, I don't want to speak for Chad, but I think the journey was very interesting.
Yeah, Chad, there's a lot there. So why don't we jump in with what it's like to be elevated to your profession, one of the highest level that you can be, and yet still have this uncertainty and still have all the challenges that Marc mentioned. Let's just start with that. What's it like to be a newly minted professional and then have a whole new mountain to climb?
Yeah, no, I mean, Marc hit our story pretty good on the head there, and we related to each other right away, even before I was waived in New England. Then certainly once I got waived, I think we related on a whole different level, and you start to feel
Mhm.
that when you have a genuine connection with someone. Marc was almost like a big brother to me through all that, as he shared what he had gone through on the business side, and it was certainly applicable feelings and all sorts of different emotions going through that. And then just Marc being open with me and allowing me to come down to his office, spend time down there in the evenings, and just really continue to grow. And that sort of helped me climb out of the hole. And he's seen it from the bottom up, because my career where it started was certainly about as low as you could go. I think I was 64% as a rookie in New England after being drafted in the fourth round. As a kicker, expectations were high. Results certainly didn't match the expectations for a variety of reasons. Marc said, unfortunately waived. I've liked to say fortunately, and as of late, because it's really allowed me to take off and be who I am. So newly minted professional, sure, on paper, but I've tried to view myself as a professional for a long time, because sort of one of the things I lived by in college and what I found to lead to success was you have to be and act like something before you can actually be there. So all my college years, I'd like to take the approach of like, okay, I need to act and be a professional before I can actually make that jump to the NFL. And I feel like that really translated well in my growth.
It's
Yeah, it
funny,
sounds
Jeremy.
like
You
it.
said Chad just said something about the blessing in disguise, right? And you learn that even in business and in life, like to even take business out of it, take sports out of it, like every door that closes, another one potentially can open, right? And I think the reality of it is you create the door opening. You don't, a lot of people when the door gets shut, they get locked in a room. Right. And then it takes a special individual to realize that the door can still open and there could be a different path. And even though that door closed, the next time you open it, it doesn't have to be dark. It doesn't have to be morbid. It has to be, what are you going to make out of it? And what did you learn from that experience, right? And everything in life is about experience. And Jeremy, we keep saying this in every podcast and everything we're doing because of what we're doing together and where we're headed with our new journeys and some of the things we're doing. And I can't stress enough the experience behind it. Like I learned probably just as much from Chad as Chad learned from me over the last 6, 9 months, especially over the last 2 to 3 months. I think it's also about supporting people, being there. It's not just about, what the euphoric end result is. It's about, this is people's lives, right? This is, you look at professional athletes, you look at successful business people, and lives matter. Right. It's about what that journey is. And, dude, I learned more about sports and NFL and stuff that I never knew about. Right. And you don't really know what these guys and girls go through that are professional athletes, right? You see what you want to see and you see what's on TV and you see what's in social media, but you don't know all of a sudden you go from this contract to zero. Right. The minute you get waived, it's like getting fired from a company. Right. Like I never forget the day Chad tells me and he calls me and he's like, yeah, I just had to turn my iPad in. I'm like, well, what do you mean? You kick a football. You're a professional athlete. Like, what do you mean you had to turn your iPad in? And I couldn't conceptualize it because I was like, then it finally dawned on me. I'm like, it's just like getting terminated from a company or losing your company or failing. Right. So I think it was a mutual there was a mutual respect, but it was also mutual learning, man. Like it was some of those things that was really cool to see. And to see that journey when he got picked up by Arizona. And Chad, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't know the stats fully, but I think he's only missed one field goal in this entire 4 to 5 weeks when he got elevated to the 53-man roster. And that was a blocked field goal that wasn't even his fault, but obviously the media, it was one of the first games and the media latched onto it like, here's Chad Ryland of New England again. And the same game, though, he shook that off and kicked the game-winning field goal. And after that, 2 more games in a row, he kicked game-winning field goals. And it showed the tenacity and the adversity and what that means. And it was like he said, he looked at me as a big brother, and I looked at it like I was more proud about Chad and feeling like he was like my little bro. And I've texted him on multiple times, like that the pride that I had of seeing somebody go from where he was in that low to now being a playoff contender was huge for me. Like, and to see being able to be a small piece of it. Like I wasn't a huge piece of it. He had his agents, he had his teammates, he had his friends from college, from high school. But to me, to see a small piece of helping somebody mentally. And Jeremy, I think this goes into culture in business. It goes into culture in life, right? Like I went through that similar experience with my son, right? And Chad helped me through that to this day. Chad texted my son when he had his playoff game to making captain. Last year he was bullied, right? So he left public school and went to private school because of certain things. And, I was able to share through Chad and through certain people that I know that mentorship. So it almost like pay it forward, right? Like I saw it being paid forward. And I think something that needs to happen in life, in sports, and in business. And I think the life in sports and everything correlate to what make good businesses and what make good business partners and what make good people, right? And I think the reality of it is, I think where society is today, we got to take a little bit more of that and pay it forward, right? And stop critiquing everybody and trying to undercut people and trying to bash them. Let's help people, even if they're competitors. Let's help people. Like helping competitor is something so important, because at the end of the day, why do you want to see him fail? It's never good for the industry. Like, you don't want to see another athlete fail. You want to see him be successful, right? And how do we support that? And I think that's something that's very important in society, not just in sports or in business.
Hey, Chad, one of the things that Marc is talking about that stands out to me is how we're all at the heart of it, a person doing all of these things. You know, we're doing our job. Our job is potentially high profile and really, really exacting at times, especially in business. And to the point just made, yours is a business. And at the same time, there's a person at the heart of that, is kind of what I'm hearing. And we're all those things. We're a friend, we're a family member, we're a professional. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to what Marc's talking about when the rest of the world only sees a small fraction of your job? They see you on TV kicking that game-winning field goal, but that is a tiny fraction of how you think about you, who you are, and the work you do. Can you talk a little bit about that, your approach? And we only see a little bit of it. What is it like for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's at the end of the day, it all comes down to the person and what does the person at his or her core believe at. For the sake of business, and specifically my business in kicking a football, it's pretty black and white. You either make the kick or you miss the kick. There's not a whole lot in between. So when your number's called, you have to perform and execute. But sort of through my whole journey, everything from high school to college to now year 2 in the NFL, from a bad year to what's shaping up to be a pretty good year. There's so much that pours into it: mental, physical, emotional. All three of those buckets have to be filled to the best that they can be filled in order to perform at a high level. When all three of those buckets are filled and my mental's in check, my emotional's in check, and physically I'm feeling good on Sundays, as I have been, I'm going out there to kick and I feel like I can't lose. I know exactly where the ball's going. I know exactly what the result's going to be, or like to, as much as I can know. All I have to do is go out and execute. That's something I felt in college. I didn't quite feel it last year. Get to Arizona, those feelings start to come back. And the game winners were certainly cool. And I'm so fortunate for those, because it got to show people, hey, this is actually the Chad Ryland that was drafted, that his close circle knows. But more importantly, the ones that even weren't the game winners were just as special. That I was just fortunate to have any opportunity to go out there and kick. First ball, even the one that got blocked after that, I'm like, I feel so good mentally, physically, emotionally. Like, I don't, I don't, for lack of better words, I don't care. Like, there's going to be another kick. It turns out there was another kick and it mattered. So we can't dwell on those little mishaps, the whatever, because there's so much more coming, and you're only as good as your next kick. You're only as good as your next business deal. That's just so applicable in any walk of life. That at the heart of it, it's all about relationships and how you want to pour into those three buckets.
Chad, how do you think culture played into it? Like, you got to experience going from New England, going to I'll never forget when you called me in Tampa that I had you fly down a kick, and you and I had no clue what the reason was, and then to come find out it was because the punter had stomach virus, and kind of bummed that evening, like, okay, he's gonna play and I don't have an opportunity to. Then you traveled to Green Bay, and then you go to AZ, and then it was an interesting weekend, right? I'll never forget the texting back and forth of, okay, we got Green Bay in one corner, we got Arizona in one corner, and then miraculously, Chad goes and gets elevated and plays against San Fran, and San Fran calls him because that kicker goes down. So now all of a sudden he went from being waived to 3 teams and trying to figure that out. And I'll never forget that the pros and cons list that Chad sends me. And it was like one of those, I didn't even understood it. Like, and it was like, okay, like how did you manage through that? And then, you know, how did you decide on the final decision to say, okay, I want to be a Cardinal? And what was that process like? Because we go through it all day, every day in business, right? Like when you're at the high of the high, you could do nothing wrong. Even when you do something wrong, you're still successful, right? But when you're at the low of the low, it always seems like everything's a problem and nothing goes right.
Yeah. No, I think when I look back at the decisions over the last 6 months, and Mark can attest this, I mean, he saw me in training camp. And he'd probably tell you that day that was one of my worst days of camp that he was there. In the last 6 months,
It's because I
Mark
was
was
there.
Mark was at the worst day of my football career, probably in the last 6 months, and also the best day in Miami when I hit a new career long and game winner. So like Mark saw two polar sides um, of my career, so to speak. But the decision making factor, it all came down to what was going to make me the happiest. Um, and I think at the core, when I talk to my family, when I talk to those people like Mark in my circle, at the end of the day, all these people just want to see me happy because they knew if Chad Ryland's happy, he's going to go out and make kicks. When Chad Ryland's not happy for whatever XYZ reason, the results are a little bit harder to come by. And that's something again that I think is so applicable to life in general, that when you're rolling and you're happy and you're feeling good, like results naturally come easier because you want to work harder towards those goals that you're trying to achieve. Just everything. It's that really cliche statement of like, or analogy of like, am I going to lay in bed and wait till the last possible minute to get up? Or am I going to get up right when my alarm hits because I know I'm fired up to go and do and chase what I want to achieve today? And for me, that's what it came down to. And that's what I felt like my happiest situation was in Arizona. But I was super fortunate to have opportunities at a variety of different teams and workouts that popped up. So I'm super thankful for all of those as well.
Jeremy, I love the fact that he said happy, right? Like
That's
everything
it.
we keep talking about, everything that's driving us on a daily basis is about experience and being happy, right? And the reality of it is that, you know, even if you're not happy, you got to figure out how do you create the experience to get there, right? That every day of the life is not going to be about being happy. It's about surrounding yourself with great people, surrounding yourself with good mentors, surrounding yourself with positivity, right? And going to your happy place is a very important part of life, right? And I think I would challenge a lot of people out there to not dwell on the negative, but look at it. Where do you find happiness, right? What is it? What is about what you do on a daily basis that allows you to be happy? And Jeremy, I think it's cliche for everything we're about to embark on, that Chad kind of said that, right? Like at the end of the day, it's kind of interesting that it wasn't like designed, right? And I think that's what's cool about this inner circle now, and the sphere of influence and the network is surrounding yourself with people who have the same drive, regardless if you're playing football, running this company, or doing that. People want to be happy. And America's going through some pain point right now. And I think that the goal here for me on a daily basis is how do you get people into that spot, whether it be clients, whether it be friends, whether that be family, like what can you do to help people achieve that? Right. You can be part of the problem or you can be part of the solution. And I've taken the path of, hey, let's be part of the solution and help mentor people and give people that time and listening, right? So again, it sounds really cliche, but it's kind of ironic how, you know, everything in life has come like full circle. It's almost like, you know, the circle of life. And I was thinking about it the other day with Lion King, and I'm like, man, like it's really cliche that Disney created Lion King, right? And what's supposedly the happiest place in America? Disney, right? It's the most expensive place in America, but it's also a place where people go to do things that you normally wouldn't do, like and live your inner childhood all over again. And it's kind of where I'm going with a lot of this stuff lately, right?
We're talking about the fundamentals. Like we're all people at the heart of it, whether you're at work, whether you're at home, whether you're Chad working on his craft by himself or part of the larger team moving the organization forward. You are at the core of it a person, and we respond to some of the same key truths. We respond to the relationships, we respond to storytelling, and we need to rely on each other. And so that to me is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing the fundamentals are sound, and things are going to get complex. Human relationships get complex, technology gets complex, information is sometimes clear and sometimes not, and you have to kind of work through that. But as you do, it all comes back to what work are you doing? What work do you want to be doing? Who do you surround yourself with? And to your point, Mark, what makes you happy? So maybe that's a good opportunity, Chad, throughout this arc for you to be doing this hard work, to be focused on your craft, your body, your team, your business. What is it that you're finding is most rewarding? Is it that game-winning kick? What is it that you rely on to keep you motivated, to keep you going every day?
That's a really good question, because I think you dive into that topic of what everyone wants to talk about, like what's your why? What's this why? And for me, it's a little more spiritual. But at the core of it is that I was blessed with a gift, which has led me to a platform which can affect others and hopefully guide others in a direction that brings light and positivity to them. I always like to say, like, football's what I do, it's not who I am, at the core. And for me, it's those special moments, like I talked about earlier, where like Mark and Aiden flew down to Miami and just so happened to be game winner, new career long, my longtime coach, kicking coach that took me in, trained me for free my whole college career. I would stay with him when I was a walk on. Didn't have money to pay for it, but he saw something in me, believed in me. Him and Mark got to meet at the game. And for me, coming out after the game and just sort of having both of those guys there, that are two of the more influential people that aren't in my blood family, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool because I didn't have any of my like mom and dad, aunts and uncles, cousins at that Miami game. It was the two of the guys that are non-blood related to me that were both standing there for that third game winner, new career long. I was like, wow, this is really like, it was a special moment. So those types of moments and those connections and relationships I made are really what keep me going.
Jeremy, I'm going to bring a guest that a lot of people in our industry know as well to this podcast with Chad. I think that this individual could talk a lot about the trials and tribulations of what it's like to build companies, as well as, you know, the successes and the failures. And I think that I've spent the day with him today, and I've learned a lot about the journey he went on. And it was nice to sit down with somebody as I feel as humble as myself. And as much as the success has driven me to do certain things, I also appreciate understanding other companies, how they operate, and, you know, getting a good take on certain things. So I am would love to bring in Brent Chandler from Form Free into our podcast. He happened to fly up last night to meet with me, and I was really excited to sit down with him. So without further ado, I want to bring Brent in with me. A gift. I even got a Form Free hat.
There
Chad,
you go. Wow. What an honor.
Chad,
What
I
an
know
honor.
that one of the things you got to do is you got to stay flexible. So thanks for staying flexible here and letting us bring Brent in. I'm really excited to continue this conversation, Brent, with you here to talk a little bit more about this aspect uh, of building a business, of building a
Mm.
team, of building culture. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, you started the journey with an idea, but then you needed to build a team around you along the way and rely on them. Can you talk about some of the things you've heard us talking about in terms of how you do that? How do you approach that culture building? How do you approach business building when you're the start of it, you're the founder, but then you got to build the rest of the squad around you?
Yeah. First of all, let me just say I am so delighted, honored to be in this company. Chad, what a pleasure to meet you. Jeremy, always good to see you. And Mark, uh, I feel blessed, you know, honored really to be sitting here. And before I dive into, you know, what I went through and really, you know, that cultural thing, I find so many uh, points of light that Chad you've shared. And I have just, you know, I have some mantras that I've carried my life, but I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and this experience is meant for our, you know, for us to be happy. We're not meant to trudge through this in a veil of tears. And I'm just so amazed, you know, in the brief moment that I've just been sitting here listening to your story and just how wonderful Mark has been in your life in such a short period of time. I love that. First of all, it's just amazing. But how did you transfer from year one to year two? Like, what was that? What was that journey? What like I could see so many different directions you could have gone, but to see where you've landed, like what happened? What worked inside of you?
Yeah,
What was it?
I appreciate you saying that. I think I look back over the last 2 years, even in the bad, I never felt like I wasn't good enough to be in the NFL kicking on Sundays. The hardest part for me was probably when I was free agent for those 4 weeks to start this year, and I'm feeling as good as I've ever felt, and I'm watching other guys make kicks on Sunday where I know I should be. Um, Kicks miss make for a variety of reasons. At the end of the day, if I kick it, I own it. That's something I'll stand on till the day I die. But it always comes back.
I'll
Yeah.
give you a fun fact. So that
Oh boy.
Chad was on the sidelines for 4 weeks, right? And I think we watched NFL football more to see people miss kicks than actually make kicks during those 4 weeks. Like I think I spent more time in front of the TV on Sundays going, okay, who can miss kicks so Chad can have an opportunity? That's kind of the bond that Chad and I kind of got to. Like I'll never forget texting him throughout this, going, "Hey, did you see that he missed this one or this one shit the bed or this?" Like it was just one of those things. Like it was kind of funny to see throughout it. And I was like, at the end of it, I was like, man, I've never rooted for somebody to miss so bad in their life because of the relationship aspect of it, right?
Sure.
Like the bonding aspect of it. And did I really want people to fail? No, I didn't. But we were rooting to see it where it was like, okay, like, all right, we kind of knew who was on the hot seat on a week to week basis, and it wasn't wrong, but it was kind of interesting to be like, man, you're and I saw that and I saw my competitive juices coming out, right? Like you saw this thing going, okay, you're rooting for the home team, you're rooting for your buddy, and it's like, okay. Then I realized, am I really doing this the right way? Am I really saying like I'm really hoping somebody else misses so Chad can have an opportunity? And you know what I realized? It was a yes. Like I never faked you that because guess what? A door has to close and another door has to open, and there's only so many teams in the NFL and there's only so many kickers. So at first I was like, man, that's kind of mean. And it's like, no, it's life. Look at what happens in business. Same thing happens in business. Sometimes there's only so much business to go around, and sometimes you have to. I think the key, and I think Chad would probably agree with this. You gotta always stay prepared, and you gotta always be ready. You always got to be focusing on bettering yourself. So when your time is there, people said it to me like, "Oh, you're lucky." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. Part of business was being lucky, but I was at the right place at the right time and created my own luck, and that was kind of that through preparation." And Chad, I don't know if you agree with me with that, but I thought it was funny. Like there was those 4 weeks in a row that were like we're literally glued to. I didn't even care about what team it was. I didn't even like the team I was watching at times. We were just watching because we knew, hey, this could be a potential opportunity.
That's no exaggeration. I think I probably received at least 20 to 30 texts from Mark related to different teams, kickers, kicks that were going on. But what I liked how Mark said, kind of with the card analogy, it's like you kind of create your own luck to a degree, and when you do things the right way and work hard and continue to perfect your craft, you're gonna have times where you got to throw down some cards, and there's other times you got to bluff your way through it to still win the hand. But
Yeah.
you can
One
do
of
a
the
lot
things,
by
Chad,
working hard.
Chad, one of the things my dad taught me was you've got to expand the surface area by which luck can stick. So,
Mm,
in other words, that hard work you're talking about, that mindset, having mentors and having advocates and defenders in your corner on your team, you're really just expanding where and when you get that opportunity that Mark's talking about, right? And sometimes it's that you find your mentor, your best friend, your business partner is more defensive of you or more aggressive than you are, right? In a lot of cases. So it's really like your mentors out there looking out for you.
100%. 100%. I love that.
It was interesting. I mean, like when you go through this journey, you go through it, and it truly is a journey.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could tell you right now, the one thing that I learned through that journey through Chad is patience. Like I would have gone through my skin if I was him. Like, cause it's one thing that he couldn't control necessarily. Like
Right.
at the end of the day, in business, you can control what you can control. I say that all the time. Don't try and control something you can't. But that's a challenge, right? Because you go from wanting to be wanted and needed to all of a sudden you're on the sidelines and you don't know if you're going to be needed. You don't know if you're going to be wanted, right? And I spent 4 weeks going, wow, like, how did you control your emotions? How did you control things? How did you get yourself up
I
every day?
mean,
Because
look at him. He's ice. Look at
he
this
is
guy.
ice. He is. He is ice. And that's
He's
the thing.
ice.
Like, it was like, I remember checking him with him the first week. Hey, where are you kicking? Right. Because all of a sudden, not only did he have to give his iPad up, he had to give the key card up, and he had where he was used to going to kick, he was no longer allowed to go in. Like, you couldn't go to Gillette anymore. Like, he was finding high schools to go kick at. And like, I remember that first week, I'm like, I got to just text and make sure his ass got up and was going to a field to kick somewhere. Right. Like, and he was so self-motivated every day, though. It was never like I didn't do it. It was like
Nah,
I
that's a
did it.
pro. He's a pro.
Yeah.
And much like, yeah, and much like Jeremy and yourself, I mean, the business that we're in, I mean, it's a constant grind. It's a dedication. You got to be the best in your game. And if you're looking forward and you're looking to create and lead and change, then you've got to be on your game, and you've got to be, that discipline. You asked about my journey. My journey started 17 years ago with an idea, and that idea was divine in some respects, but it was big. It was understanding that everybody borrowed and everybody had an ability to pay. And I don't take credit for it. It came in and I received it. So I'm blessed. But I coveted that. And I really cherished, what that meant, that we could potentially understand everybody's ability to pay and give them an opportunity at home ownership, which truly is part of the nucleus of what this country's built on. It's where families are raised. It's where wealth is generated. So to me, being able to potentially encrypt that and take somebody's financial DNA and encapsulate that in an encrypted format that they could use in the future in some form or fashion, that was the journey. And in order to do that, it's a big idea. I mean, I needed some help, right? I needed the help of the government. I needed the help of some really good leaders to surround myself. And you talked about, the relationships that we build, you know, um, that is at the epicenter of everything I am and everything we do. It's about love. It's truly about love beyond the surface level skin and what we see. There's a spirit, there's a body of love. There's a human that needs to be loved. And that is the corpus of what I do. I get to build stuff. I build it with love. And when I help people, it remunerates, it reciprocates, and reciprocity is important. It's really important because the more reciprocity we have, the more help we can do. And that's what Marc's all about.
And it is. And you know what I learned in those 4 weeks that we were rooting for people to fail? Do you know how many of my competitors root for us to fail? Like that was one of the lessons that I learned is at the end of the day, as I watched Chad wake up every day and go through not having a real home to go to, because that's really what happened. He didn't really have a home to go to.
Right.
And I realized, you know what? I got to make sure that I'm doing the same thing that I'm practicing every day, because at the end of the day, this is life.
Yeah.
Like people are waiting for you to take that step of failure so that they can come in, and that's part of being great, right?
But one of the things you shared with me today, which I just, jump in here real quick. We got to keep those blinders on, man. It's okay for the haters to hate, they're gonna, and there's not a lot we can do about it. And I love what you said. You basically said, let them.
Can't control those people.
Can't
You
control
can't control them. And Chad couldn't control all the people in New England. Like, dude, I could tell you right now that pardon my language, but the shit that was fucking talked about from him, like,
but look at him.
I got mad as big bro. I was like, man, you
Yeah,
say
you're
that
right.
shit, you better come to me, because I'm like,
I
this
feel
is
you.
ridiculous.
That's
Like,
your boy.
you know, I'll never forget the thing is that, you know, when he got waived, the first article out there was, we got to give Chad credit for missing that field goal that brought Drake May in, because had he not missed that field goal, we wouldn't have gotten that pick.
Oh,
And
man.
that to me, that was real, right? And that was like one of those, like, and I hope to God that he used that as the fuel for why he woke up every day, right? Why did you do what you did? Well, I woke up every day to prove the haters wrong, right? Because no matter what we do in life, people are going to hate, because
Right.
the jealousy in America is beyond belief out there, right? And it's tough. The higher you go in life, the higher you go in your career, the higher you go as a professional athlete, the lonelier it friggin' gets.
Ah,
And
yeah.
Chad, I don't know if you felt the same way, but it's reality.
Yeah, no, but I think the little fun fact in that whole thing, you bring up that article and the kick against New York, that I missed to tie the game in the fourth quarter, that they say got the Patriots Drake May, whatever. It was a 35-yard field goal on the right hash. Very makeable kick. I missed it in MetLife the first week I'm playing out here with the Cardinals against San Francisco. That game winner, 35-yard field goal right hash. Exact same kick that I had missed at the end of last season against the Giants. It was but I went into that kick with two separate mindsets, and it was wanting to go make that kick for everyone else that was on the sideline, and not just on the sideline, but also in the stands at home that have been supporting me through this whole thing. That was like the real full circle moment. I walked out to that kick. I'm like, I'm on the same freaking hash that I just was in the worst kick of last year.
That's awesome.
Chad, how do you tune out the noise? Because this is one of the most phenomenal questions. I know Jeremy's got a question, but I think I want to parlay this, because you're sitting in stadiums with 50, 60, 70,000 people, walking into that, knowing that you had the target of the media on the back, like you had everything. Like, how the hell did you tune out all of that, especially after what you just went through in New England, to now being one? I mean, what, 2 weeks ago you were named NFC Player of the month. Like, you go from that the low to guys, I'll tell you, he texted me. He actually called me an hour before the release, and he's like, "I just want to let you know, because you've been in my corner this whole time. It's going to be announced." So, the things, fun facts that I knew that he was signing Arizona, and I knew that he made NFC Player of the month.
Yeah,
And
congratulations.
it was cool for me, because it was like, okay, that was that big bro moment that said, hey, you know what?
Stuck by him.
It was there, right?
Yeah.
But Chad, how do you do it? Like 60, 70, 80,000 people, and it's different than just being, hey, I'm running the route, gonna go catch the ball. You're making game-winning field goals with not only your teammates, the opponents looking at you, but all the fans looking at you. And I think it's important to understand from a business standpoint, because that's what we're going through. Not to that level, because we don't have 70,000 people staring at us, but we got the whole world in business waiting for us to fail.
Yeah. That's a good question. I'll always answer it in the nice guy, which is still true, but you put in the work, naturally, why would the results not come? If I do everything I can during the weekend prep to sleep right, eat right, train right, sharpen my mental routine, do my whole pre-kick routine to the highest degree on game day, I go out there, as long as I take my steps the right way and the ball gets down, we should be making kicks. The dark side to that answer is Chad Ryland on game day is completely different than Chad Ryland talking right now, or Chad Ryland that you see in a social, relaxed setting. You're in the net, kicking net, warming up to go hit this kick, and you get all these people yelling at you, whatever. And all I can think of in my head is like, listen, guys, like, I'm getting paid to be here. You're paying money to watch me go do this. So I appreciate you for filling my pocket with this. But I always like to say the nice guy answer is like, why would it go anywhere but what I want it to? So you can make as much noise as you want, like get your money's worth, whatever, have another beer, like enjoy the game, enjoy the show, because it's about to go up in fireworks.
Yeah, let's go. That would drive
So
me.
one of the questions I have is around looking ahead to the future. And Chad, we'll start with you, but I'd like to ask Marc and Brent this same thing as we go around here towards the end. And that is, when you're down in those obstacles, you're down in those challenges, you're looking ahead and imagining success. When you're up at success, you're looking ahead, it sounds like, to stay focused on the work, to stay focused on the routine. Can you talk a little bit about how important goal setting is? We all know we want to get to a certain point. You almost never end up where you imagined. Can you, we've been looking backwards at,
Yeah.
obstacles and challenges. How do you think about the future when we don't control what's going to happen to us, but we still have to have something we're looking forward to? So in your position where you are, how do you do that? How do you balance that?
I love that. I can answer this one pretty good and pretty efficiently, I think, from my perspective in terms of kicking, because when it comes to game day, all I'm thinking about is forward, and that next kick or that kick that's about to happen, and it falls into three real simple words for me, and it's calculate, create, execute. Left brain, right brain, physical. Calculate the kick. Obviously, we got to see what's the wind doing, what's our field conditions, how are we body feeling, what's the field goal operation like. That's going to give me my target line of, okay, this is where that ball is going to go. Once I know calculated where that's going to be, I have to be able to see that in my head, be able to see those slow rotating laces after the ball leaves my foot, and just kind of tune into what is this ball going to look like after it leaves my foot. And then the execute part is just go out there and do it, which for me, I think is probably the easiest part. Is once you have that calculate, create, and left brain, right brain together, the executing part comes a lot easier when you can see it.
Mark,
Yeah, that's wild.
how about you? How do you look ahead? How do you think about where you want to go, knowing that we don't control it?
It's a really tough question for me because my mind is always working in crazy manners, right? So I think some of it for me is, what was the experience that I had over the last 30 days and what went well versus what are areas that I know that I need to improve on, and how do you become a better leader, right? Like, because to me, I think the difference between what Chad does and what I do is he's got to do it solo, right? It's him. That's him. Like there's a team behind him, but in his position, that is about his foot, about his time, and about his moment. I think the difference for me in the business world is how many people rely on me from a daily basis, right? How many people outside of business rely on me, and the critiqueness of the internal employee to the external client to everything is very challenging, right? You question your sanity at times. Jeremy, I say this, I think I've fucked up more than I've had success, right? And I think at the end of the day, the one thing that's important in the business world is recognizing when you've made that mistake and be able to pivot. Don't dwell on the fact that you made the mistake. Own it,
Mm.
move on from it, and recognize it and be okay with telling the world that you made the mistake, right? Like I say it to this day right now, 14 years ago, almost 15, I went bankrupt. I wasn't happy about it then and I was ashamed about it. But had I not done that, all I needed was one opportunity, one moment, one time, and realize, how did I get there?
Mm.
Right? People don't want to own their failures because of pride. And I think that's one of the problems we have in our industry is there's so much pride out there,
Yeah.
and everybody has to be the know-it-all of knowledge to put on the facade, right, Jeremy? I mean, think about it. Every day of the week, there's people out there on social media telling people what they want to hear, not what reality is, right? And the last 3.5 years of this industry have been a grind, right? Like it's been uncertain. It's you don't know what you don't know, right? I think the reality of it is you become a student of your business, right? Just like Chad became a student of his trade, right? I think at the end of the day, the minute you stop deciding to learn and being the student is the minute you're going to see failure. And it's not just about seeing the failure, it's also about how do you overcome that, right? Like, you want to portray confidence, but you also want to portray humbleness and vulnerability. I think one of the biggest problems people have, and it's not just in our industry, it's across the world, is not willing to be vulnerable, not willing to own the fact of mistake. Everyone covers up because there's a pride issue and there's an ego issue, right? And we all have egos. There's no you don't get to be an NFL kicker without an ego. You got to have some chip on your shoulder. You don't get to the success level in business without some of that chip, but you got to put that in perspective to others that you need in your life to be successful. So I think, Jeremy, when you ask that question, there's no definitive answer of what I look at the future. I think I study a lot of what are we doing well? What are our competitors doing well? What is the industry doing well? What's happening in the world, right? There's so much change that just happened in the last 30 days that, it's very important to be intuitive to it, right? And understand that the future is all about changing all the time. I will say this, the one thing too is the minute you think you made it, you never made it, right? The minute you think you made it, you didn't make it. It's like running a marathon. You didn't go out thinking, you didn't start out running hard, right? You start out, you realize there's 26.2 miles ahead of you. You better not release all the gas in the tank on the first mile. Otherwise you ain't making 26.2. And life is a journey. It is a marathon. And you gotta be able to realize that every day is a new day and every day is a new opportunity. And what you learn is so important.
Well, I think you've brought it full circle. We were talking earlier about how we're all one person. And what you're saying is like, I don't try to distinguish the work me from the personal me. I'm authentic. That's what I'm hearing is authenticity around, hey, I'm going to talk about it. If it happened to me, if I say it this way, if I say it that way, it's just how I say it. I'm telling you about me. And when I ask the
Bro, it is what it
question,
is, right?
that's it. And when I ask the question, I'm always asking about you, right? I have my thoughts. You've got yours. Chad's got his. Brent, it's like, how do you view it? Because I want to know more about you. And you're saying, like, if we share more of that, whether you call it vulnerability, whether you call it authenticity, whether you call it pride, whether you call it confidence, the reality is we're learning about each other so that we can do this better. Whether
You know
it's
what
a
everybody
podcast, a
says?
business, or a friendship.
100%. You know what other piece of this is like, think about this. Everyone in America talks about work-life balance, whether you're a kicker, that's your job, whether you're stocking shelves, that's your job. You know what reality is? There's no such thing as friggin' work-life balance. It's called balance, right? You need to work in order to pay to have a life, right? So the reality of it is you need to figure out what makes you happy and what that balance is in order for you to be happy, right? In order for you to create the experience that you want in life. There's no definitive answer. What your balance is may not be my balance, right? What you have going on in your life may not be what's going on in my life. And I think what America has gotten wrong is everyone has this cliche notion of what balance is supposed to be, right? There's no such thing as work-life balance. It's called, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go in your career? Some people are willing to sacrifice stuff that others aren't willing to sacrifice in order to get there, right? And that doesn't make somebody who's not willing to sacrifice it a bad person. It makes them a person who are making a decision on what they want to do, and that makes them different. And that's okay, right? Like, think about the statistic of getting to the NFL and staying in the NFL, right? If you look at that stat, most are not willing to do it. And then most aren't willing to come back through that adversity. So, Jeremy, I don't have all the answers. I think the reality of this is that at the end of the day, it is that important to understand what balance means to you and understand what future is, and understand that understanding what the future is for you has to determine what your balance is. Like no one wants to always walk a day in a life in my shoes, right? No one wants to sit there and work 18 hours, but they want to see what I have. They want to see that success.
Oh, they want
to
be.
Are they willing
they
to
want
do
what
it?
you have, but they're not. Yeah. Are they willing to walk those miles?
Right.
Right.
And are you willing to be authentic? Are you willing to be real?
Yeah, Brent, let's turn to you. Let's turn to you on this idea of the marathon that Mark's talking about, that everyone's watching you run this marathon, but it's your marathon. If you could kind of talk to somebody who's in, call it mile 9 of their marathon, mile 10 of their marathon, they're in it, they're sweating, it's painful, but they're not even close to halfway to getting done the marathon. What advice do you have for that person today?
Wow. Well, as a marathoner, and what's interesting is, marathon was my race. I would race marathons. I mean, look, to run a marathon and finish is a huge goal and testament to a lot of people. I wanted to win them. So, that was my gig. I was a marathoner, and what I would tell you is how I apply not only running a marathon, but running my business and running my life. Um, I use a lot of the same tools, and part of it's harmony. Part of it is harmony. And I like to think about life, work, harmony. And notice I put life first. Harmony is such that it ebbs and flows, and it really depends on, for me, I may have to throw extra effort into work for a long period of time to get something over the hump, right? Much like a run. Like you might hit mile 9 and you're getting a cramp. Like, what are we going to do? We got how many 18 miles to go here. So it's really harmony, and that allows me to adjust to my happy place. I want to be happy, but sometimes I don't get a weekend. What am I going to do? Sometimes I don't get enough sleep. What are you going to do? You guys travel. You guys, and Chad, I can imagine your workout routine is really, really, really amazing. It's discipline. It's discipline. You know your stuff. You know your steps. And I apply that to my life and business where, I'm 110 percenter, right? Another thing we have in common here, 110. My number in soccer was 11. I was a 110er. A 110er just means do one more. When everybody else is doing 100%, do one more. And for me, I set a goal. I look down the road. I say, where do I want to be when I'm 80? And that's like next year for me, by the way. I know I don't look it, but it feels like it anyway.
That's mortgage years.
Those are mortgage years. But yeah, it's visualizing that place. And you're young, Chad, and Jeremy, you look really young too. But Mark,
that's his hair.
Yeah, he's got that hair. It's like,
isn't his hair beautiful?
It's
like I do have to say this. Like he's got the best hair in the industry.
And look at the smile. He just lights up a room. And Chad, you're cool as a cucumber. I love it. You're just stoic. But I visualize that place down the road, man. I see it. I see my grandbabies. I see, sitting around the fire pit on a lake somewhere. And I say, what am I doing today that's going to help realize that? If I'm just bucking around and I don't know, not paying attention and I'm not putting in the effort, then I don't know if that's actually going to happen. If I'm taking the time off and I'm like living, playing golf or doing things that I'd really like to do instead of like grinding right now, which I need to do, then that may not happen. And I should not have any disappointments in that. So that's where the harmony comes in. And I say, what am I doing today? Is this going to help or hurt? And I look at everything and I go 110, I do the right thing and I do my best. And guess what? When you do that, you win.
Here's the other thing too.
Win.
You can only plan so much. You also got to live in the now.
Yes.
Right. The other piece of it is I think everyone plans so much to figure out what their future is going to be, and they forget to be present.
Be present.
Right? And then that's part of the
you got to get present right here.
You got to be both. You got to plan for where you want to go and the goals you want to do, but then you have to do the fundamentals of the present to get there. And I think it's one thing to dream and it's one thing to dream big, but it's another thing to do the fundamentals in order to realize your dream.
Got to bring it back.
And part of the dream is it's about others. Even though Chad is a kicker, right, at the end of the day, and
he's serving that audience
thing, he's serving an audience, but it's also, he's had a plethora of team behind him.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just his teammates on the sidelines, not the 52 other players, but how many people we started a conversation earlier today with the body, the team that was required to make sure that your body is in the best shape, the nutritionist, to this, to that. Like, preparation is part of success. Right. It's about what you 100%. Do every day mentally. Like, and I think everyone can say this, whether it be in business or an athlete or whatnot, the mental piece of success is enormous, right? It's not a small piece of it. Like the ability to be mentally prepared for your day and living in that moment while you're realizing your dream and seeing what the future is. It's a juggling act of all of this. It's not about, hey, what's my plan? What's my future? It's all of the things in life, because life throws things at you at every minute of the day.
Yeah. And what about you, Jeremy?
He just has good hair gel.
What's your why, buddy? What keeps you going?
I guess I've been riding this brand longer than I thought. If Mark thinks that it's as strong as it is, I did not, I don't think of it that way, but
Yeah.
I do go back to what I was saying about authenticity. My goal, Brent, has always been to share as much of myself as I can each and every time I have that opportunity. So, similar to how everybody was saying they've got a process. A long time ago, my process became answer well. And that meant to me, as small or as big as that question was. So to me, if I have a chance to focus on an email and I only have 10 seconds to answer that email, I'm going to do the best I can in that 10 seconds and send that email. If I have a chance to talk to an intern who's working on my team on innovation or strategy, I'm going to dedicate my focus to that conversation with that intern just the same I would to a CEO or another business partner or somebody else. In that moment, it's answer well to whatever questions before you and do it as authentically as me. And so a lot of people have responded to me that just they find that that connection is there, and I think it's only because of that. I don't know for sure, but I think
Jeremy, I
that's what it
agree
is.
with you. One of the things him and I were talking about, and we had a conversation today on this, you also got to be around people you like, right? It's very difficult to be around people you don't like and they can weigh you down. It doesn't matter what their ideas, it doesn't matter how successful they are. Sometimes in life, it's okay. Not everyone fits everybody, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I find people challenge themselves because they feel like they've got to adapt to certain things. And sometimes it's just not worth the adaptation. It's too much energy.
Yeah, I'll
You
come
gotta
back
be,
to what
you gotta
Chad
do
said,
you.
which is, yeah, I'll come back to what Chad said, which is like the conditions can change. The stadium can change, the weather can change. That first moment of having to calculate, for me, like Mark, I can't control everybody I interact with. I can't control everybody around me. What I can control is how I respond to them. And if I'm consistent that somebody I like, I respond consistently. Somebody I don't like, I respond consistently. It doesn't mean I have to choose to give them more of my time, certainly, but it's gonna happen. And as long as I continue to do that step of just like I'm gonna be consistent here and focus on what I can control, I think that's helped as well.
You know, the litmus test behind that is when somebody picks up the phone. If you're always sent to voicemail, you know there's a problem, right? And I think dude, I'll tell you right now, I joke about it, but I'm really not joking. Like at the end of the day, like and I said it, like Chad knows it. Like even when I've called him and he's been in the middle of something, he'll always text back. They can't talk right now. I'll call you as soon as I'm done with practice, right? Like you know who's in your sphere. You understand who's part of it based on just that alone. Like if you text somebody and they don't answer or whatever, you got to look at that. And it's okay to morph through life in that and say, hey, you know what? This wasn't meant to be. But don't continue to spend so much more energy on something that may not be meant to be. Guess what? Sometimes that will come back around, even if you want to be friends or be partners with somebody or be a client with somebody. Yes, I'm all about follow up and follow through, but sometimes you also got to know in the art of the game, right? The art of the game. Life is a chess game, right? And sometimes you may not win that battle or you may not win somebody over. It doesn't mean it's over. It means it's over for that moment though. And recognize that and realize, okay, what maybe you don't know why, right? But I realize that like sometimes you just got to stop for a minute. It's okay.
Yeah.
Chad, thank you for joining us. One of the things I mentioned earlier was just how the conversation might flow. And I feel like being in the moment and having having this conversation go in a lot of different ways was really important because it's who we are. It's what we're trying to do. And so I guess we'll end with this, give you the last word. What is something that you're thinking a lot about? What is something you're working on that is going to be the next step for you, the next level for you? And that can be a takeaway for our audience.
Yeah, that's a great question. And for me, how I would say I'm most, ooh, that's really good. I think ultimately it comes down to is how am I going to continue to better myself? You guys had mentioned, I think it was Mark said about like when you stop accepting that you're a student is usually when it goes downhill. And for me, it's like, okay, I feel like I'm pretty far developed now in my football bucket. How can I also elevate my real life, my outside of football business bucket and continue to grow, build knowledge, build relationships? And just like Brent said, like where do I see myself with my future kids, my family? Like I'm willing to put in all the extra work now while I'm still a 25-year-old single male in Phoenix, Arizona, and off season to continue to grow so that I can experience those things how I want to down the line.
Well, thank you for bringing that perspective to us, man. I think, we're big fans. We're going to be rooting for you every single Sunday. You guys are pushing towards the division, towards the playoffs now. So we will be Arizona Cardinal fans for you and watch you the whole way and keep supporting you. So thanks for spending this time with us, and really appreciate your insight and your experience. And Brent and Mark, thank you for weighing in and sharing your experience and tying this whole thing together. This is who we are, and this is what we're trying to do with the RealEDGE podcast and with our relationships. So thank you all.
Chad, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Love you, bro. Have a good Sunday. I'll be watching again. And this time I'm not watching for people to miss because I know you're going to make it.
Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Chad.